Earth, wind, water and fire. The Shaman is World of Warcraft's master of the elements, being able to DPS from afar as a caster, get stuck into the fray as melee, or even heal allies as restoration. With the whole expansion being centered around elemental turmoil, you'd hope the Shaman would shape up pretty well, and you'd be right. You also get a few more choices for your Shaman too, as Goblin can become Shaman for the Horde, as well as Dwarves on the Alliance. But with 3 specs to cover and a bunch of changes to go over, let's talk Shaman in Cataclysm. So first up, as always, our baseline changes, and we will begin with Elemental. Fire Nova now originates from targets affected by your Flame Shock instead of your Totem, and its cooldown is lowered from 10 seconds to 4. And Purge will remove 1 magical debuff now on enemies instead of 2. Bind Elemental is new and is a single target hard CC effect against an elemental enemy, with damage breaking the effect. You also get Spirit Walker's Grace, allowing you to cast spells whilst moving, and it can be casted while you're already mid-spell. This has a 15-second duration and a 2-minute cooldown. Also, Lightning Bolt gets a new animation in Cataclysm. For Enhancement, Flame Tongue Weapon now increases magical damage done by 5%. Flame Tongue Totem will increase party and raid spell damage by 6%. Wind Fury Totem will now increase melee and ranged haste by 10%. Wind Fury Weapon now causes 3 extra attacks with bonus attack power, and Rock Biter increases threat by 30% and reduces damage taken by 5%. New for Enhancement is Primal Strike. This is just a button you press before you get hold of Storm Strike. Elemental Resistance Totem is new as well, which is just all of your resist totems combined together. And you have Unleash Elements, which empowers your next ability depending on your weapon imbue. If you have Flame Tongue, your next fire spell will deal 20% more damage. Frostbrand will slow the target by 50%. Wind Fury increases attack speed by 40% for your next 6 melee swings. Rock Biter will taunt for 5 seconds, and Earth Living will increase the effectiveness of your next direct heal by 20%. For Restoration, Tremor Totem now works raid-wide, and you can use it whilst under effects, which it can remove. There is of course the general healing rework. Healing Surge fills that role that a lesser Healing Wave used to, in that it's fast but it costs a lot. Greater Healing Wave is your big, slow, efficient heal, and Healing Wave is now your slow, efficient, moderate heal. Your ability to remove poisons and diseases as a Shaman is gone in Cata. This includes Cleansing Totem and Cleanse Spirit, and Cleanse Spirit itself in Cata will now only remove curses. New to Restoration is Totem of the Tranquil Mind, which causes allies to lose 30% less casting or channeling time, and Healing Rain, which places down a healing field in a zone, restoring health to allies inside every 2 seconds for 10 seconds. So let's check out some talent trees now and see what we have. When you pick Elemental, you get Thunderstorm, which is the same as it is in Wrath really. It knocks people back, it does some damage, but now it also has a 40% slow added onto it as well. Shamanism gives you some scaling on your big spells, and reduces their cast time by half a second. Elemental Fury gives you 100% bonus crit damage, and removes the cooldown of Chain Lightning. And your mastery is Elemental Overload, which now also includes Lava Burst. It's very similar to the talent of the same name, but it's just something you can actively scale with your gear now. In the talent tree, Reverberation can now lower the cooldown of Wind Shear by up to 10 seconds, putting it down to a 5-second cooldown, making it the lowest interrupt cooldown in the game. Elemental Precision increases all damage and makes Spirit also count as hit, and something you can treat as an interchangeable stat if you do end up rolling something with Spirit. Rolling Thunder restores some mana and causes your Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning to have a chance to add an extra stack onto your Lightning Shield up to a cap of 9. And the talent just below it, Fulmination, will cause Earthshock to consume these excess Lightning Shield charges to instantly deal damage. Elemental Mastery gets a nice buff. It still makes one of your spells instant, but now it gives 15% damage and 20% spell haste for 15 seconds as well. And Feedback is new, causing Lightning Bolt and Chain Lightning to reduce the remaining cooldown on Elemental Mastery by 3 seconds. You get Lava Surge 2 that gives Flame Shock ticks a chance to reset the cooldown on Lava Burst. And at the bottom of the tree is Earthquake. This is a casted ability which causes damage at its location, with a chance to knock down enemies inside. And it's in a bit of a strange spot in Kata. So early on in the expansion, Earthquake was actually a channeled ability, and the problem was back then was, well, it just didn't do much damage. Also, it cost a ton of mana, so that was no good. In patch 4.1, Blizzard buffed it to now be a casted ability instead, and in 4.3 they even buffed its damage by 75%, and it's still just not very good and doesn't do much damage, unfortunately. There will be elemental builds out there which say straight up, do not take this talent, and they would be right to do so. Even in the ideal scenario where you can precast an Earthquake on a place where ads will be moved to, they'll stay in there for the full duration, and they'll be affected by the knockdown, it's still just kind of average. If Blizzard are considering much in the way of rebalancing stuff during Kata, maybe this talent should be something they think about. Elemental uses glyphs such as Flame Shock, so you just have to refresh it a bit less, Lava Burst for some more big damage, but most importantly, Unleashed Lightning, which allows you to cast a Lightning Bolt whilst moving. This is an absolute gameplay changer of a glyph, and is probably one of the most fun things about this spec in Kata. When you pick Enhancement, you get access to Lava Lash, which is really just unchanged. You can also dual wield, have a bonus 6% hit chance, and you can parry as well. Mental Quickness will give you 55% of your attack power as spell power, and you can no longer benefit from other sources of spell power, rip Spell Hants. Also, instant spells and totems cost 75% less mana. You get Primal Wisdom, which just aims to keep your mana bar healthy, and your mastery is Enhanced Elements, increasing all fire, frost, and nature damage. In the tree, we have the new Focus Strikes, which increases damage of both Primal Strike and Storm Strike by 45%. Elemental weapons is something that every spec will look to pick up, both buffing the passive effect of your weapon imbues, as well as making Unleashed Elements that much bit better. Ancestral Swiftness makes both Ghost Wolf instant and increases your movement speed by 15% passively. Having an instant Ghost Wolf is just a really nice move speed tool, which I would struggle to play Shaman without, so I'd always pick this up. The debuff from Storm Strike now causes your nature damage spells to have a bonus 25% crit chance versus the target, and Shamanistic Rage now causes all non-healing abilities to be free for its duration, in addition to the previous damage reduction effect. Searing Flames causes that totem to stack up a debuff on its target up to 5 times, and Improved Lava Lash will consume these stacks for bonus damage, and will also cause your Flame Shock to spread to 4 nearby targets. Maelstrom Weapon is very similar to Wrath. It causes your attacks to have a chance to grant a stack of Maelstrom, and at 5 stacks a number of your casted spells are both free and instant. And at last we have Feral Spirit, which is now a 30-second duration ability with a 2-minute cooldown. And what they do is very similar to Wrath, so they'll have a 2-second stun, a Blessing of Freedom type effect with a 60% move speed increase as well, a gap closer, an AoE taunt, and they'll heal for the damage dealt. So really they just do a bit of everything. Enhancement takes some pretty straightforward damage increasing prime glyphs such as Lava Lash, Storm Strike, and Wind Fury weapon. Next we have Restoration. When you pick this talent tree, you get Earth Shield, which is unchanged. You put it on your main target. When they take damage, they heal a bit. You get Purification, which is a 25% bonus to healing spells, and a 0.5 second cast time reduction on Healing Wave and Greater Healing Wave. Meditation allows 50% of mana regen from Spirit to continue in combat, and your mastery is Deep Healing, which increases your healing done depending on your target's missing health. Ancestral Resolve can reduce damage taken while casting by up to 10%. Very nice passive mitigation bonus for both Elemental and Restoration here. Spark of Life increases healing done by 6% and received by 15%, and Totemic Focus increases the duration of totems by 40%, as well as reducing their mana cost. This is a big talent for Restoration that has several cooldown based totems which really benefit from the longer duration. Nature's Blessing increases the effectiveness of your direct heals on earth shielded targets, and Soothing Rains improves the effect of both Healing Stream Totem and Healing Rain. Mana Tide Totem has a bit of a rework and will increase your party and raid member's spirit by 200% of the Shamans. This turns Mana Tide Totem into a tool that regenerates mana for pretty much just the healers, instead of giving your party a percentage of their mana back. Telluric Currents is an interesting addition, causing Lightning Bolt to regenerate mana equal to 40% of its damage. You pick up this talent and there's never a reason for downtime anymore on your Restoration Shaman, there'll always be a button to press. And Spirit Link Totem is your big new raid-wide cooldown. Players inside will take 10% less damage, and every second all players will have their health equalized, such that everyone has the same percentage max health. This stacks up great with the Shaman's other heals, which generally do want players to be stacked, such as Healing Rain or Chain Heal. Tidal Waves work similar to Wrath in that it reduces the cast time of your slow heals and the crit chance of your fast one. And finally we have Riptide, which again, just like Wrath of the Lich King, it does a bunch of instant damage and then a heal over time effect, and it can be consumed by Chain Heal to improve that spell's effect. Resto considers prime glyphs such as Earth Shield and Earth Living Weapon for more healing, and Riptide to increase the duration of it. So how are we expecting Shamans to perform overall in PvE this expansion then? Well, I reckon the spec you're going to be seeing the most of, for a change, will be Elemental. With Lightning Bolt on the move, powerful cooldowns such as Fire Elemental and Elemental Mastery, and Overload now becoming their mastery and benefiting Lava Burst, this spec stands to gain a lot of damage. You bring a good set of utility through totems and your talent tree passives, and of course a heroism or bloodlust type effect if you don't have a mage in the group. Elemental's also pretty straightforward to play and get good results from. You just don't waste your Fulmination stacks, keep Flame Shock up, press Lava Burst whenever you can, keep your totems up, and then just press Lightning Bolt. And for AoE, Chain Lightning gets its cooldown removed too, so it becomes way more powerful. What is a bit of a shame with Cata, being how it usually is that I don't think Earthquake is going to see much play. It feels undertuned damage-wise, and I'm assuming that this is the case because of the CC effect that it has on top of it. If you were topping damage meters whilst also spamming a knockdown effect on mobs, that would be kinda crazy. Blizzard has been more open to making class changes throughout Wrath though, and I'm not sure there is a single other spec in the game which really doesn't care about their capstone talent in many scenarios. Then again, saying that, Elemental is already going to do great in PvE, and a buff to Earthquake is a buff to Elemental. Maybe if it was just cheaper and took less time to cast, it would be enough to make it work. Either way, we'll see what Blizzard end up doing here. Next most popular, I think, will be Restoration Shaman, particularly in 25 player raids where their toolkit is really good. Both Mana Tide Totem and Spirit Link stack up better when there are just more people in the raid as a whole. Mana Tide because in 25 there's more healers to benefit from it, and Spirit Link Totem because there's just more health bars to redistribute. Restoration also gains powerful AoE healing through Healing Rain, and Unleash Life into a direct heal can provide some very mana efficient throughput. Shaman's Mastery Deep Healing can also scale super well on fights where there's just a bunch of damage going out, because the lower people's health bars are, the more powerful the Resto Shaman gets. An Unleash Life Greater Healing Wave crit on a low health target can take them from death's door to near enough full health, and with how healing works in Cata, not everyone can do that anymore. I don't think Resto Shaman will be quite as popular in 10-player raiding environments, where it tends to be the case that you take Disc Priest and then Holy Pala or Resto Druid, but I'm sure people will find a way to make it work, and if you're sticking to normal, they'll be just fine. Finally, I reckon the Shaman spec we'll be seeing the least of this expansion will be Enhancement. The big thing that Enhancement's typically brought for is the buffs, mainly through totems. Their big bonuses in Wrath were an attack power buff, which can now be brought by popular classes such as any paladin or a blood DK, melee haste, which is now melee and ranged haste in Cata, this can be done by a survival hunter or a frost DK, and of course heroism or bloodlust, the most powerful cooldown ever, which can now also be done by a mage. Now maybe you're a 10-player raid and you don't have all these class buffs and Enhancement fills the niche really well, but I'm just gonna say in 25, more often than not, you're gonna have these all covered, which puts Enhancement in a spot where they need to do damage to compete, and whilst they are fine enough in this regard, you'll often find other specs beat them out. I've no doubt a skilled player will make Enhancement work, but the argument has always been a skilled player will make an average class good and a good class great. so why just settle for good? Enhancement seems fine as a whole though, and if you do have one in your raid, I do expect it to be one, and guilds may not recruit them as much as other classes and specs, but those are just my impressions I get on it heading into Cata at this early stage. Next up is PvP. For Elemental, there's a few key talents here that need picking up, such as Lava Flows, which gives you a crazy 90% spell haste when Flame Shock is dispelled for 6 seconds. You'll also want Earth's Grasp to cause Earthbind to root targets when you use it, as well as going into Enhancement of course to get that instant cast Ghost Wolf, which is just too good not to have. Elemental will have a pretty similar playstyle to Wrath too, in that they'll have a bunch of off heals, utility and burst, but they also do lose out as well. With bigger health bars overall, your Lava Burst, even when it overloads, isn't going to be as scary as it is in Wrath. And Elemental also loses out on a big passive damage mitigation tool in Astral Plane, which used to reduce damage taken when stun, feared or silenced by 30% passively. It's just gone now, there's nothing to replace it. Also, if we think Earthquake is unusable in PvE, it's incredibly unusable in PvP. Are you going to have a few seconds to stand there and waste tons of mana on something that barely does any damage? No, that's just not going to happen. To add to the list of downgrades, you also can't use Heroism or Bloodlust in Arena in Cata anymore, so one of the Shaman's biggest selling points is just gone. Elemental is still good in larger scale PvP, such as rated battlegrounds, where you have more breathing room to sit back and cast, but for Arena specifically, I think you're going to have a harder time getting good results on this spec compared to how it was in Wrath. And I'm going to have to say more or less the same for Enhancement here. It does get some interesting new talents such as Frozen Power, which encourages you to use Frostbrand Weapon for quite possibly the first time ever in Classic's history, and Frost Shock will root targets which are more than 15 yards away from you. You also get Earthen Power, which causes Earthbind to remove slows as well, but the spec just feels as though it's missing something. It doesn't have a Mortal Strike effect, it's got very few CC buttons, Feral Spirit can stun but that's on a 2-minute cooldown, and you don't really have that many defensives either once Shamanistic Rage is done. I mean, it is only on a 1-minute cooldown, but that's kind of your main thing. As always though, it's partially down to preference and what you feel you'll get the best results with. But for Cata, I do think it's right to say Enhancement will on average have a more difficult time climbing the ladder than some other specs. Which leaves us with Restoration Shaman, and thankfully I get to say some positive things here now, because I think Resto Shaman is the most improved PvP healer from Wrath moving into Cata. I've mentioned it before, but the deep healing mastery can just get so much value in PvP, and though you can't remove poisons or diseases anymore, you can still get rid of curses, and you get a defensive magic dispel in your talent tree. You also still have Purge, so you can now remove magic debuffs offensively and defensively. This is kind of a big deal, and for the first time ever, a class other than Priest can do this. The bigger health bars in Cata also really benefit the Shaman's big new cooldown in Spirit Link Totem, and you also benefit from the healing rework a lot thanks to Tidal Waves constantly empowering your casted abilities. Don't forget you still have things such as Earthbind, Grounding, Wind Shear, and all these other great tools. Back in the day, I remember a lot of really strong comps having the foundation of Resto Shaman and Warlock, and then usually a Rogue or something like that. We'll see what ends up being popular these days though, but I think Resto Shaman, if you're interested in PvP, is going to be a great pick. Let's check out some tier sets. So first up we have tier 11, the Raging Elements set. For healers, the 2 set gives 5% bonus crit chance on Healing Wave, and the 4 set gives 540 spirit for 6 seconds after having casted Riptide. Restoration of course scales great with crit thanks to their mastery as well as Ancestral Healing and Awakening, so this is great. And more spirit is just a bit more mana regen. For Enhancement, the 2 set increases the damage of Storm Strike and Lava Lash by 10%, and the 4 set adds 10% crit chance to Lightning Bolt. A bit more damage on your rotation passively, and with the new Storm Strike debuff, your Lightning Bolt will have a baseline 35% crit chance, so not bad. And Elemental gets 10% bonus crit chance to Flame Shock on their 2 set, as well as reducing the cast time of Lightning Bolt on their 4 set. Following that, we'll have tier 12, the Erupting Volcanic set from the Firelands. For Resto, the 2 set gives periodic healing from Riptide, a 40% chance to restore 1% of your base mana when it ticks. max. This should be around 235 mana restored, which sounds very strong actually. With Glyph of Riptide, the hot space duration will be 21 seconds, and it's only on a 6-second cooldown. The 4 set makes this even better, as Chain Heal will no longer consume Riptide on your main target. This seems like a great set for Resto Shaman. The Enhancement 2 set makes it so Lava Lash gains an additional 5% bonus damage from the Searing Flames talent, moving its bonus damage from 10% per stack to 15%. And the 4 set makes Storm Strike cause its target to essentially take 6% more damage from all your fire spells. Again, this seems like another good set. And for Elemental, it's amazing too. On the 2 set, Lightning Bolt has a 30% chance to reduce the remaining cooldown on your Fire Elemental totem by 4 seconds, and the 4 set makes it so when Lava Surge procs, your next Lava Burst is instant cast as well. This should really smooth out your gameplay and allow you to fire off your big cooldown that bit more often. Last, we have Tier 13, the Spirit Walker set from Dragon Soul. For Resto, the 2 set makes it so after using Mana Tide Totem, the cost of your healing spells is reduced by 25% for 15 seconds. A big healing cost reduction added to one of your raid-wide cooldowns is always nice. And the 4 set increases the duration of Spirit Walker's Grace by 5 seconds and gives 30% haste whilst it's active. That'll put Spirit Walker's Grace up to a 20-second duration, and during that duration, you gain your own heroism effect, which is pretty fantastic. For Enhancement, your 2 set makes it so while you have any Maelstrom weapon stacks, your Lightning Bolt, Chain Lightning, and heals are 10% more effective, and the 4 set makes it so your Feral Spirits have a 45% chance to grant a stack of Maelstrom each time they deal damage. You should be getting stacks crazy fast while Feral Spirit is active, which should make this into an even more fun burst phase. Finally, Elemental. The 2 set makes Elemental Mastery grant 2000 Mastery for 15 seconds. I have seen some sources which say 1000, but I'm going to go with 2000. In practice, what this does is it adds about a 20% additional chance for Overload to happen during Elemental Mastery. And your 4 set makes Overload grant 250 haste for 4 seconds, stacking 3 times. Just another good passive damage buff for Elemental here, another great set for this spec by the looks of things. And that is the Shaman in Cataclysm Classic. I'd say the biggest winner coming off the back of Wrath of the Lich King for me is Elemental, which goes from a kind of okay utility one-off spec to a real DPS powerhouse. I'm expecting it to be very popular. Resto feels like an evolution of the Wrath of the Lich King version that packs more diverse heals and raid-wide cooldowns, and Enhancement is still a fast-paced spec with a lot going on and can perform fine enough whilst bringing a wide variety of different raid-wide buffs. But let me know how you feel about the Shaman in Kata. Will you be giving it a go? And is there anything else that you would have added to the video? Let me know down below. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you on the next one very soon.